Hello friends and neighbors, I'm Jamie Sosnowski of the Parish Church at Habersham, and I love to tell people the story of how the Parish Church came to be. The evidence of God's providential hand directing our steps to me is both beautiful and powerful. We're in a current moment of both blessing and challenge, but we will continue trusting God as we continue our campaign called Building on Faith. Allow me to tell you some of the things that God has done to bring us to this point so far. You see, during a time when illness and anxiety were at a peak and isolation and depression were already at record levels in our country, God worked through quarantine restrictions to bring about a new congregation of worshipers. Every Sunday we declare that Jesus dwells in us and we in Him. When we proclaim that, it changes people, it changes lives. One story is that Cynthia and Derry were moving from their mountain house down to the low country. We're looking for a neighborhood, and when they found out there was to be an Anglican church plant in Habersham, it helped settle their minds that this was the place for them. Through getting to know them, I learned that Cynthia had played church worship music for the majority of her life. But with arthritis in her fingers, she had given up her piano, thinking that that chapter of her life was closed. However, when the mother church, St. Helena's, provided a keyboard, she found that it took less pressure from her fingers and she was able to begin playing again. So every Sunday, she blesses our congregation with that gift that she had thought was lost, but now is back, thanks to God's providence. In terms of our congregation, Pentecost 2020 was the birthday of our church and our first Sunday meeting. In the height of the pandemic, when everyone was locked up inside and indoor church worship was prohibited, we gathered outside. We sang praise to God. We had fellowship with neighbors. We proclaimed transformation in Jesus. God had worked in mighty ways to make all this happen. God also provided us with a mother church in St. Helena's with a rector, Shea Gilliard, whose vision was to raise up young leaders and to send them out to start new worshiping communities. God also provided musicians, equipment, communion vessels, everything we needed to have Sunday morning service. God had already begun, before that, to prepare a congregation. By the way, His Spirit had moved in prayer gatherings. The first one was right here at the Park House. We gathered to pray for our neighbor, Barbara. And then later at the River Retreat, we had potluck and prayer gatherings. Through these, our people were ready to worship. And the developer of this neighborhood, Habersham, kindly gave us a place to meet. How could all of that have happened apart from God? Since then, God has continued to show us that He is moving. He's working to give us this future church home. I see His hand at work in the success of our campaign to date, the leaders He continues to provide, the favorable terms of the land contract, and the blessing that was our milestone Sunday service on the lot. He continued to grow our service, and He continues to transform the lives of people who are placing their trust in Jesus for the very first time. They're being awakened and transformed. For 32 months, we have met under the trees by the marsh in every possible weather condition for our area, including our coldest service to date just recently on Christmas Eve. Bishop Edgar visited us, and he and I spoke, and he was so supportive of the work that God is doing here. And I began to understand that God will use our story to bless other churches, other communities. I invite you to think of the people who will come to love their true Savior Jesus through what God is doing right here. You see, it's a joy to be part of the amazing work of God, and it's a blessing to share it with you. I hope you can begin to feel just how exciting it is when you proclaim that Jesus dwells in us and we in Him.